I left that town behind, but the town never left me. Even across state lines, I could feel it, like an invisible tether wrapped around my ribs, pulling me back. It lived in the corners of my mind, in the gaps of my memories, in the shifting weight of my own reflection. Every time I blinked, I half expected to open my eyes and find myself standing in front of that impossible door again. The whispers at my back, the cold seeped into my bones. It started subtly, a cold draft where there should have been none, a flicker in the mirror, too quick to be real but too distinct to ignore. I told myself it was nothing. That's how it always starts, doesn't it? Rationalization. I let it live in the back of my mind like a tumor I refused to acknowledge. Growing, waiting. Then came the dreams. At first, they were fragmented, flashes of the fog house, glimpses of the impossible corridors stretching into eternity. My uncle's face, twisted in that too wide grin, the feeling of fingers brushing my skin when I knew I was alone. Then the dreams became clearer, more structured. It wasn't just me trapped in that house anymore. There were others. Faces I didn't recognize, but somehow knew. Their mouths moved, but no sound came out. Their eyes were wide, pleading. The worst part was that I recognized the fear in them because I had felt it myself. One night, I saw myself in the dream, not just as an observer. I was there, standing in front of the mirror that had never shown my reflection before. Except this time, it did. And the thing staring back at me wasn't me. It was wearing my face, but the longer I looked, the more I realized how wrong it was. The skin was stretched just a little too tight, the smile a little too wide, the eyes empty. I woke up gasping, the air in my apartment suffocating. My heart hammered against my ribs, a sharp pain coiling around my chest. I scrambled for the light, my fingers trembling, my breath coming in short, ragged bursts. The room was silent, but the feeling hadn't left me. I didn't sleep again that night. The next day, I saw something that made my blood turn to ice. I was walking home from work, my breath fogging in the crisp evening air. The city bustled around me, indifferent. I turned a corner, and that's when I saw it. A door, standing alone in the alley between two buildings. It looked exactly the same warped wood, the same rusted handle. My entire body locked up. My brain screamed at me to move, to run, to not even breathe in its direction. But I couldn't. I stood there, frozen, staring. Then the handle turned. I didn't stay to see what came out. I bolted, shoving past confused pedestrians. My pulse pounding so hard I thought my skull would crack. I ran until my lungs burned, until my legs threatened to give out. When I finally stopped, my hands were shaking so violently I could barely fish my phone out of my pocket. I called my mom. I hadn't spoken to her in months, not since I left that town behind. She picked up on the second ring. "Mom," I gasped. "It's happening again." She didn't ask what I meant. She didn't need to. There was silence on the other end, and then, "You need to come home." The last thing I wanted was to go back, but I didn't have a choice. The fog house had found me, and it wasn't going to let me go this time. The drive back felt endless. The farther I went, the more the world seemed to shift. The trees lining the road growing taller, darker, their branches clawing at the sky. The fog appeared long before I reached town, rolling in thick, swallowing the edges of the road. The headlights barely cut through it, the shadows moving strangely within the mist. By the time I reached my childhood home, my hands were stiff from gripping the steering wheel too hard. My mother was waiting at the door, her face pale, her eyes sunken. She looked smaller than I remembered, like something had been steadily draining the life from her. She didn't speak, just stepped aside and let me in. The house smelled the same old wood, faint traces of coffee, the ghost of something I couldn't quite name. But beneath it all, there was something else, something metallic, something rotten. I turned to my mother, my voice hoarse. "What do we do?" She finally met my eyes, and for the first time, I saw the fear she had kept hidden for so long. "We should have burned it," she whispered. "We should have destroyed it when we had the chance." A chill ran down my spine. "You've seen it, haven't you?" I asked. She didn't nod. She didn't need to. The truth was there in her silence. The fog house wasn't just a story. It had been a part of our family for generations. And now, it was calling me back. That night, I barely slept. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the creaks in the walls, the wind rattling the windows. But it wasn't the wind. Somewhere outside, in the fog, something moved. And then, a knock at the door, slow, rhythmic, familiar. I stayed frozen in my bed, every muscle locked in place. But the knocking continued. My mother's voice trembled from down the hall. "Don't answer it." I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The knocking stopped, and then, from just outside the window, a whisper, "Let me in." The voice was wrong. It had a cadence I almost recognized, a distortion beneath the words that made my skin crawl. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing it to go away, willing the fog to take it back. Then the window creaked. I turned my head just slightly, enough to see the glass shifting, warping inward as if something was pressing against it from the outside. A shadow moved, its edges indistinct, its form too fluid to be human. My breath caught in my throat as a pale hand pressed against the glass. Long fingers, too many joints. The whisper came again, closer this time. "You've always belonged to me." I couldn't move. My body refused to respond. The hand slid down the glass, leaving behind streaks of something dark, something viscous. The window buckled inward, the latch trembling. The air in the room growing unbearably thick. Then the voice changed. It spoke with my mother's voice. "Let me in, please. It's so cold." I snapped upright, gasping. My bedroom door swung open, and my mother stood there, her face ashen, her hands gripping the frame. "We have to leave," she whispered. "Now." I didn't ask questions. I didn't hesitate. We ran. But the fog house wasn't done with us yet. 1. The vanishing hitchhiker. It was past midnight when David spotted her standing by the roadside, shrouded in mist. Her long, wet hair clung to her pale face, and her dress, an old-fashioned white gown, seemed drenched despite the dry road. She raised a trembling hand, signaling for a ride. Something about her presence sent a chill down his spine. But his mother's voice echoed in his head about always helping those in need. He pulled over, and she slid into the back seat without a word. The silence stretched between them as he resumed driving. The air in the car felt colder, and in the rearview mirror, she sat motionless, her hands folded neatly in her lap. When he finally asked where she was heading, she whispered an address that sent a shiver through him. It was a place he knew well, an old house that had burned down years ago. His hands tightened on the wheel, and when he glanced at the mirror again, the back seat was empty. Only a single waterlogged footprint remained on the leather upholstery. When the Parkers moved into their dream home in upstate New York, they never imagined it would watch them back. The first sign was subtle, a creeping sensation of being observed, even when alone. Then came the whispers in the walls, indistinct murmurs that faded when approached. The children refused to sleep in their rooms, claiming the house breathed at night. The family dismissed their fears until the eldest son found a hidden doorway in the basement, leading to a cramped crawl space. Inside, dusty monitors flickered, each showing a different room of the house in real. The camera feeds came from impossible angles inside closets, beneath beds, even within the walls. As they stared in horror, a new screen flickered to life, displaying their terrified faces from just behind them. Lena thought it was a cruel prank when she received a call from her late mother's number. The voice on the other end was distant, distorted, yet undeniably familiar. "Lena, don't go to work tomorrow," it pleaded before cutting to static. She tried calling back, but the number was disconnected. Brushing it off, she continued her morning routine, unease settling in her gut. As she approached the bus stop, a speeding truck lost control and plowed through the bench, where she would have been sitting. Shaking, she stared at her untouched phone, the call log blank, as if it had never happened. Every night, Amanda heard scratching above her bedroom. Her parents blamed raccoons, but the noises grew more deliberate: fingertips brushing against the walls, muffled breathing seeping from the vents. One night, unable to bear it, she climbed onto her dresser and shined a flashlight into the air duct. A pair of eyes stared back. The scream that tore from her throat sent her parents rushing in. The vent was empty by the time they arrived, but the next morning, they found a crumpled note beneath her pillow. "You almost caught me." A late night walk home turned into a nightmare when Jeremy noticed the man across the street. He was dressed in a suit, but his movements were wrong, too fluid, too exaggerated. Worst of all was his grin, stretched to wide, unblinking eyes fixed on Jeremy. At first, he thought the man was drunk, but as he turned down a different street, the smiling man followed. He didn't walk, he danced, feet barely touching the pavement, always smiling. Jeremy's pace quickened, but the man's rhythm never broke. When Jeremy finally ran, the laughter began, guttural chuckles that chased him all the way home. He locked the door, but when he checked the peephole, the street was empty. The next morning, a smear of red was painted across his front door in the shape of a grin. Caleb's grandmother always warned him about the shadow at the end of the hall. Never look too long, and never ever acknowledge it. He thought it was an old woman's superstition until he stayed over one summer. At night, the hallway stretched impossibly long, the air growing thick with something unseen. He saw it, a slouched, inky figure, featureless but undeniably watching. His heart pounded as he obeyed his grandmother's rule, turning away. The house groaned as if relieved. But the next morning, he found his younger cousin staring down the hall, transfixed. When he called his name, the boy blinked and turned, face pale as death. That night, his cousin was gone, his bed cold, the front door wide open, and the hallway empty. Nurse Avery had worked the night shift long enough to know which rooms were empty. Room 509 had been out of use for years. Yet on her rounds, she saw the light flicker on from under the door. The hairs on her arms rose as she slowly pushed it open. The bed was made pristine as always, yet the heart monitor beeped softly. A chart lay at the foot of the bed, blank. Just as she turned to leave, She heard the rustle of sheets. The next morning, her supervisor asked why she had charted a patient in a non-existent room. The security footage showed her standing inside, speaking to no one, nodding as if responding to something unseen. A group of friends rented a remote cabin for a weekend getaway, eager to disconnect. But on the first night, something knocked at the door. It was past midnight, and the nearest town was miles away. The knocking grew insistent, rhythmic. When they peered through the peephole, there was nothing but darkness. The knocking stopped just as suddenly. The next morning, they found the trees surrounding the cabin carved with symbols, dozens of crude staring faces. The messages scrawled beneath them made no sense. But one thing was clear: they had never been alone. While exploring an abandoned hospital, Mark and his friends found a staircase leading upward. Despite the building having only 2 floors, the steps stretched impossibly high, disappearing into darkness. Curiosity got the best of them, and they climbed. After what felt like hours, the air grew thick, pressing against them. The stairs never ended. Panic set in, and they turned back, only to find themselves in an identical hallway. Yet something was different: posters in a language they couldn't read, a metallic scent in the air. A door slammed somewhere far away, followed by slow, deliberate footsteps. Late one night, a local radio station received a distress call. "Please, you have to help me," the voice begged, filled with terror. The host assumed it was a prank until the caller gasped, "It sees me," followed by the unmistakable sound of static and something wet moving across the receiver. The call cut off abruptly. The next morning, authorities traced the call to a house deep in the woods, long abandoned. Yet inside, the phone sat off the hook, and the walls were covered in desperate messages. "Don't let it hear you. Don't let it know your name.